Welcome to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. This is not your typical financial radio show. As a licensed CPA, insurance agent, and investment advisory representative, Chris coaches his clients on a holistic view of financial well-being with an objective of providing a complete financial strategy to fund life's goals. Chris is here to guide you down the path to the financial serenity you deserve. Now, here's Chris Cooper.
All right, good morning, folks. We have an exciting show here today. And so when we think about life, we think about fun. Obviously, I think about finance. That's fun. We want to make sure we can enjoy doing things. That's what money is there to do. But I think about summer. I think about one of my favorite sports, the American pastime of baseball. And in studio with me today, I am very proud to say hello to Dave Phillips, retired local, lives in Lake St. Louis, umpire in the Major League Baseball arena. How are you, Dave?
I am very good. Thank you for inviting me, Chris, and looking forward to having a fun time on this show.
Oh, man, it's going to be great. So this is so cool. So you have actually been able to enjoy a career watching basbaseball. That is just awesome.
I have. I guess I could say that I had the best seat in the house.
Yeah.
Except I had to stand.
You did have to stand, so it's not really a seat. That's right. And sometimes behind home plate, I would think that gets pretty uncomfortable too, crouching down like that all the time.
Well, in the big leagues, there's four-man crew, and you rotate every day. In my case, if you were the crew chief, of which I was for most of my career, you start off at home plate, you go to third base, second base, first base, and so every fourth game, you work home plate. Home plate is by far the most difficult position to work. Obviously, you have more calls to make and decisions to make, and third base obviously would be the easiest to work because you have less calls to make. But home plate can be easy to work if you have a good pitcher to work, meaning a good pitcher. What is a good pitcher to work? One who throws strikes.
Yeah.
One who keeps the ball over the plate. A guy who's difficult to work would be a Nolan Ryan. Not because he throws so hard, but because he was always 3-2 on every batter.
Sure.
3 balls, 2 strikes. Well, that one's close enough. I mean, it got to the point that that's how he was. I mean, when I first went to the big leagues, he had a catcher by the name of Del Rice. For those of your older listeners, Del Rice was a catcher with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
Back in the late 40s, early 50s. I remember I had his baseball card as a young boy. And he was a manager for the Angels, and just shows you the sign of the times. Of course, so your business, really very interested in this regard. He offered Nolan Ryan, of all things, if you could pitch one full game, that would be 9 innings in his day.
Yeah.
Without walking a batter, I will buy you a suit of clothes. Well, now, I mean, that was a big deal in 1970. And today, if you offered that to a player in the big leagues, say anybody, I don't know, he's the youngest player of all, he would say a suit of what?
Yeah, no kidding.
But the money and the things have changed. But
quite a bit.
Back in the other side of the coin is no one never got the suit of clothes because he wasn't capable of doing things.
Right.
That was a feat that was not attainable for him.
So Nolan Ryan, I mean, you'd mentioned off air, all the different names that you've been able to be a part of in this game. It's pretty exciting, but you are a St. Louisan, true. But you mostly did American League.
I did.
Yeah. Now, was it hard to ever root for, because I'm sure you had great players and things like that. Is it difficult to balance some of the personal and professional feelings on this kind of job?
I've been asked that question many times. Did you ever root for a team? Yes, very honestly, I rooted for a team every time I went onto the field. I rooted for a team every time.
Yeah.
The difference being is I rooted for the team that I worked for, and that was the 4-man team that I walked in the field with. The umpiring team.
Yeah.
And what I was rooting for was that we would go onto that field, work a game without any controversy. Everything would work out well, and we would get off the field without any controversy, and everything worked out well. And if that happened, then my team, my 4-man umpiring team, had a good game, and I was very, very content. As a young man growing up in St. Louis, as you mentioned or asked me prior to coming on, was I a Cardinal fan? I most definitely was. I was a St. Louis and born and raised in a St. Louis Cardinal fan. I didn't care for the St. Louis Browns. I was a young kid. The Browns were still here at the time. I was very young, almost about the time that I was getting used to knowing what the Cardinals and the Browns were. They moved, and I was glad they did because I didn't care for them. But I was especially a Stan Musial fan, as all the kids were at that time. And that's what I did. I lived and breathed the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, and you mentioned me before we came on the air, but you worked mostly in the American League, but you did work 2 of your World Series, you worked 2 that involved the St. Louis Cardinals.
That's right. Yeah.
I did. And, again, you might say, well, gee, you love the Cardinals. No, I sure did. I did as a kid, but I could have cared less who won the World Series. In fact, the Cardinals did win one of those World Series, and they lost one.
Yeah, they got swept in the 87. I think you were on the crew there.
Yeah, they didn't get, they went both of the World Series that I worked with. The Cardinals went 7 games. They lost the seven-game World Series.
They did.
The
Okay.
Twins, and
it was the Twins. That's right.
And they won the 7-game World Series with the Brewers.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, and I'm not a betting man, but if going into the series, I would have thought the Brewers probably were maybe favored to win that. They had a really good ball club. I mean, a really good hitting ball club. And
this was the 82
World Series, and yet the Cardinals came out on top in that World Series in a 7-game, very closely and hard-fought series. But I think probably the Brewers may have been the better of the 2 teams. Turned out it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
And conversely, in the 87 World Series, I would have said just the exact opposite. I think the Cardinals may have been the better of the 2 teams, but the Twins won. Now, having said that about the Twins definitely had a definite advantage in that series in light of the fact they played in a dome, and the Cardinals were very unfamiliar with that dome that year, as was most any visiting team that played there, because, first of all, the noise level was incredibly loud, and you couldn't hear yourself. It's a little very something that you wouldn't know, and I didn't know. I never even thought about it until you don't know it. And what you don't know is you don't hear the sound of the ball hitting the bat.
Yeah.
Until you don't know, you don't hear it. and they made it a point of making a loud noise in that dome in that series. You couldn't imagine it. And in fact, I had a friend of mine who was a doctor who I had given some tickets to go to the World Series from St. Louis, who had gone there, and he called me afterwards and asked me if I was going to go to OSHA afterwards and make a claim. And I said, for what reason? He said, I had a ear, nose, throat guy who was there, and he went with me, and he said that it was the sound was like having a 747 jet at second base for 3 hours.
Holy cow.
And I said, well, I know it was really bad because it was 2.5, 3 hours after the game that I could actually get my sound back to where I was talking like I was screaming in a restaurant. My wife would say, what'd you think about the game? And I real loud, and she'd say, oh, wait, don't talk so loud. I couldn't get I didn't realize I was talking that loud. And so it was really incredibly loud. But having said that, going back to what I said, the ball was hit before you knew it was hit. It was really funny. It's something that you didn't ever notice in any other game that I'd ever worked.
Yeah.
They just prided themselves on being so loud that year.
Wow.
And then the Cardinals tried to do the same thing when they came to St. Louis.
But it doesn't work in a dome.
It just
it's not the same.
Off in the night.
Yeah.
And they try, and then the other thing was the Cardinals weren't used to the white ceiling on the dome, and there was a couple times where the routine fly balls were hit, and they stood there and looked, and all of a sudden, next thing is bouncing on the carpet.
Yeah.
In the air, and a routine ball that would have been a fly ball out was bouncing for a double or a triple.
Yeah.
So it was a very big home field advantage for the Twins.
Yeah.
On almost any time they played anybody that was not used to playing in the dome.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and that's that 13th man in football kind of thing too, right?
So, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've had this great career, you're Hall of Famer, actually, right? So, or I guess St. Louis Baseball Hall of Fame or St. Louis?
St. Louis Baseball Hall of Fame as well as the Missouri Hall of Fame. I was very fortunate to have been elected both of them, and very, very happy to, been born and raised here and been honored by.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that the key to being a good umpire is also it's not you almost want to not be known, right? That's kind of the whole thing behind the job, right?
Yeah, I started as a young kid here, and as I told you earlier, my goal in life was never to be an umpire.
Yeah.
My goal was to be a superstar. I wanted to hit home runs and make diving catches.
Yeah,
have people yell for me, not at me. And I had no desire to be an umpire. My dad was a minor league umpire, and I suspect that's how I knew a little bit about the job, because I traveled with him when I was a young boy at 8 years old. But again, I really didn't pay much attention to what my dad was doing, because again, the players were there and I was interested in the players. But my dad retired in 1956, and I'm only about 12 years old, 11 years old, and I really care about all that. They came around, and I was playing on a pretty good baseball team at the time, and it's very common now having young kids umpiring baseball and basketball and different sports, but then it was not. And the guys who were umpiring our games, my age, 11, 12 years old, were guys who were 45, 50, 55 years old. And unfortunately, they were having difficulty getting into the games on time because of their other work commitments and so on. So the league president at the time came to our team, because we were good athletes, we had a good team, and said, we're thinking about getting some younger people involved in umpiring, and how many guys might be consider umpiring.
Okay.
I was like, none, really. And he proceeded to tell us all about umpiring and why we would be good at it, why we should do it, and this, that, whatever. And nobody put up their hand and say, yeah, we'd like to do it. And then he said, well, I don't know if I mentioned it, but we pay $5 a game with that. 11 of us put our hand up and said, yeah, we'd be interested. So the monetary reward got our interest. And so I started, and $5 a game in umpiring back in those days, there wasn't a lot of jobs available other than cutting grass, delivering newspapers, or washing cars in those days.
It sounded like a pretty good one.
A pretty good gig. As a young kid. I'm 11 years old, 12 years old, 13, whatever. So I'm umpiring baseball for 8-year-old kids. And I'm getting to a couple, 3 games a week, 10, 12, $50 a week. And, I'm doing pretty good. And next year I did more. And the next year I did more. And by the time I'm 16, 17 years old, I'm working 8, 9, 10 games a week. And I'm kind of doing it, really making the money, not so much wanting to do it as a job, a profession. And now it kind of vaulted me into working church league basketball games. I guess they thought, well, gee, if he can umpire baseball, he must be. And I was playing basketball, so I had general knowledge of playing basketball. And I knew what traveling was, and I knew what this. They didn't have to call basket interference and goaltending because none of them could do it anyway. So I only had to know.
Made the job easier.
I only had to know a few calls. And so I started doing that as well. So I had a job in the winter. I had a job in the summertime. And so that's how kind of got me going into officiating. And it just carried on. And next thing getting ahead of myself. But somebody asked me one time when I got to be about 17, 18 years old, did you ever think about going to umpiring school? Well, my father had never done anything. He just went off minor league baseball. I don't know how he ever got started in that regard. But I said, well, I don't know, where's this umpiring school? And they said, well, it's in Daytona Beach, Florida. Well, never been to Daytona Beach, Florida, or Florida anytime.
Yeah.
And it sounded very, very interesting to an 18-year-old kid. And I thought, man, that sounds awful. So I finally decided to look into it. And by the time I was 19 and a half, I said, I'm going to try this. Everybody's encouraged me, tell me how good I was, and, pat me on the back. I don't know how good I was really, but they kept telling me that. And Florida sounded awful intriguing, and I ventured off and went down to Florida to 6-week umpiring school in Daytona Beach, Florida in January of 1964.
Very cool.
There were 60 students there, and 4 of us ended up making the major league.
Wow.
One of which was Ron Luciano, who later became he was a former NFL player and went to Syracuse University at the same time. Jimmy Brown, who was an NFL Hall of Famer, played there, and he was in that class with me. Another by the name of Jake O'Donnell, who became an NBA referee, as well as a major league umpire. He retired from umpiring to become a.
Now, when you work for these leagues, does your check come from the league, or are you independent contractor, or is it from the league?
No, you work for the league. You were owned by the league, and
okay.
That's how that was done. Now, in college basketball and high school and all that, you're an independent contractor.
Yeah.
But as a, all that was independent contractor. But when you work for the league, I worked for the Midwest League first. I went to the umpiring school, 6-week course. Teach you everything about umpiring, ball strike, safe out, fair foul, rules, all that. They rate and evaluate you. I was rated 3rd in my class out of 99 students. I know I've told that story many times, and a lot of people that watch me work over the years, they used to question, when you said you were third in your class, always said to me, was that from the top or was that from the bottom? After they'd watched me work for a while. So weren't too sure about that. But anyway, I finished 3rd in my class that year, and they offered me a job in the Midwest League, which was covering the states of Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And I readily accepted $315 a month job.
So I was wondering about that. So it's paid per month then at some point in time. It switches from per game, and then it goes to like a per month, like a salary.
Yeah, my first year contract was $315 a month. And that was everything. That was including, paid for your hotel out of that, your food out of that. Now, I wasn't married at the time. However, I had gotten engaged at Christmas time prior to going to umpiring school. I don't think my wife was going to, my future wife was going to consider letting me go to umpiring school if I wasn't going to commit. So I don't know if she didn't say that. I thought I'd be on a commitment.
Well, this is a lot of travel. I mean, you are all over the place, and the career that it takes you. You see some great places. You get to see some really neat games, get to meet some cool people, but there's an element of travel that's there too.
I got to say this about me, I would say this very honestly. The hardest part of my job ever was the traveling. I was not. My mom never dreamed I could do what I ended up doing because she thought I would be very much homesick. I was, I remember going to college. I didn't care for college too much. My dad used to say, "Well, you think you're going to be able to do this umpiring? You didn't even like to go down to Cape Girardeau. How do you think it's going to be in baseball?" I said, "Well, always, I'll be okay." Well, I remember going to the Midwest League, and I liked it. I did like it, but there was a lot of nights I was like, well, this is kind of, I don't know if I liked it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there was a lot of lonely nights, that type of thing.
Of course.
And the same thing, and then you enjoy, if you like what you're doing, it takes up the time, and you like what you're doing. So, and then, and I worked 2 years in the Midwest League, and then I got a promotion to the Texas League. And the Texas League was a whole different ballgame. I went out to spring training. I got sent to spring training in California, and I never came back to St. Louis until September.
Wow.
I never came back the entire time. And by that time, we had a baby. We were married and had a baby. Sharon came down. My wife, Sharon, came down to Little Rock, Arkansas, which was the closest place to St. Louis at the time, and I didn't see her. I left in, I guess it was March, and I didn't see her until, I guess it was early June. And I was really involved in trying to survive, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Learning, new league, new people, new everything. And so it did occupy a lot of my time, but and then I really started, getting the confidence of doing what I was doing and enjoying what I was doing. And I got through there and I really, really picked up my game in the second half. And I was in tune. I just knew I had it going the right way. And lo and behold, I got promoted to the International League the next year.
Yeah.
So in 3 years, I got promoted to within one step of the major leagues, AAA baseball.
Yeah.
Which I could not have been imagined in my wildest dreams when I started that in 3 years, I'm going to be in AAA baseball, which is one step away from baseball. Now, I'm only 22 years old.
Right.
And I'm umpiring for guys that are, Ernie Broglio, the great trade.
You're getting there.
He's in the league in the league I'm working in AAA. He had been sent down, but there's all kinds of older players that are playing in the International League. When I go to the International League, and a lot of the reasons for that is that a lot of them, they were hanging around in the International League 67, 68 because they were hoping to hook on in the 1969 when they were going to expand with the Mets.
Yeah.
And I believe it was Houston, if I recall correctly. But they were going to expand. The Mets were going to get a new team.
Okay.
And so they were all hoping that maybe they would. So they went down to the minor leagues and got on teams.
Yeah.
And hoped they have a good year. And so I got a lot of players that were in their 40s playing.
Yeah.
And I'm in 23 years old. So a lot of experience, great experience. But also, they look at me like this kid.
Yeah.
They were expecting an old gray head. Same thing when I went to the big leagues. When I went to the big leagues at 26 years old, I walk onto the field and guys would look at. They were used to old, gray, fat, heavy. I didn't. And again, I was at right place, right time because the major leagues were looking to create more longevity for their umpiring staff.
Right.
They realized that they didn't take umpires up to the big league 30, 35, 40, and they were losing a lot.
Well, you need that experience, you have to build that. You have to have that plan.
And it turned out really well for them. Now, there was some growing pains for, at the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's like anything, I've said it many times. If I could have went to Walmart, bought credibility, by God, I went down there and bought something. But you can't. You got to earn. You got to earn it.
You do.
You earn it day after day, game after game, year after year.
Yeah.
And you do it game by game. And fortunately enough, I did what I did, and I became good at what I did by doing it game after game, year after year.
Now, did you ever realize, at what point in time did you realize, professional umpiring, that's my career now? Or did you never just get there? It just kind of all of a sudden was over.
You mean when I knew?
Yeah. When did you know? Because you've done some big games. World Series games, National Championship games. So at what point in time did you go, you know what? This umpiring thing this is what I'm going to be doing now?
I think that I had pretty much turned when I got to the Texas League. That was my first promotion.
Yeah.
2 years in the Midwest League, I promoted to the Texas League, and I kind of floundered the first month and a half. When I say floundered, I was excited, raring to go, and then they started beating on me a little bit because they didn't know who I was. And then I got traded to a different crew, different guy, and I turned the corner. I really turned the corner big time. And all of a sudden, it was just like I just jumped out of the box, and I got my confidence.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
And he was a former veteran. He was a veteran umpire who I was working with, who had been fired by the major leagues several years before. He came back to the minor leagues. He job. He was a former major league umpire. He took me under his wing, he taught me a lot of things. He gave me encouragement. Kid, you can do. You're good.
Yeah.
You're really good. And by him doing that with me, and giving me that confidence, I mean, I knew.
Yeah.
I knew.
That's awesome.
I was, and then I went, I was young. I was a young kid.
Mentors are so important. I mean, we often overlook that, but we always have that mentor that kind of helps frame our career, frames our guidance, and helps us kind of get to that level. And they might not know you're necessarily your mentor, but when you look back at what you accomplished, there's those moments where you think that's when it clicked. So,
there's no question about it. And you know, and that meant a lot to me. And I always tried to do as I grew as not only in age and experience with me as an umpire, I tried to remember those days when some of the younger umpires had some of the issues that they experienced. I would take them aside and I'd say, "You think you had a tough time tonight? Let me tell you about a couple of times I had." And let me explain it to you. And you know, you look at them, you talk to them, and all of a sudden, because sometimes you think you're the only guy that ever experienced
that's right.
Nature. And when you're able to talk to a young umpire, or a young person, or a young guy that's in a batting slump or something like that, and they think they're the only guy that's ever had that happen to them, it really means a lot. And it meant a lot to me when a guy did that to me.
Yeah.
And so I tried to pay it back a little bit.
I love it.
Really helped me, and I gave that back to younger guys.
Yeah. Now, are you still a baseball fan today? I mean, you've seen a lot of games, probably more than most people, by far.
Well, I umpired probably about 4,500 Major League Baseball games total. And I talked about my minor league games all together. I probably 6,000.
I was going to say, absolutely.
But am I a baseball fan? Not as much as I was as a kid. I don't watch baseball as a lot like I did. I watch it every night. But I watch the 8th and 9th inning.
Yeah.
I always get a kick out of the game's changed so much.
Well, that's where I was kind of getting to. Like, what are some of the things that have changed, and you think it's good, bad? Like, you know, there's all this talk about the strike zone being kind of more automated these days. What do you think about that?
Well, technology's here. It's just no question about it. They're trying to use it. They're trying to give the fans the experience that they're seeing on TV and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And other sports are doing so much things with technology and so on. So it's hard to ignore. And it doesn't bother me one bit if they use it, they want to use it, and they think it's good. I'm a little bit of a proponent of I'm pretty much of a purist. I like the way the game was played.
I think a lot of people are.
For years, I liked it. It was a great game. I mean, you know, Ozzie Smith, as great as shortstop as he is and was, he made errors. He made an error occasionally.
Yeah.
And, you know, you made it went to the game. Why did he make an error tonight? Well, that's just what happens sometimes. That's what the game is.
Yeah.
Game happens. Things happen. You don't like it, but that's what happens, you know, and you'd prefer it to always be everything just like you like. But that's what makes it a game. And, you know, not always is everything just the way and, you know, the umpires are really, really, I say this not just standpoint. I'm sitting in the studio here, and I don't have this, but guys that are good.
Yeah.
They don't miss pitches. I mean, they like to put this box out here, give you all this. I mean, you gain your credibility by doing it day after day,
right? And
the players know when you walk on that field, they're damn glad they have who they have working.
Yeah,
they know who's good and who can, and who can't, who does and who doesn't.
Yeah. Well, and that's when because I mean, you don't just get invited to go do a play. You don't apply to do a playoff game. You get invited, right?
Yeah, so. And I think that they're taking it somewhat a little bit further than I like. But then again, they're doing what they think they have to do, and that's okay. But I personally like the way it was. I like a lot of things the way they were, you know.
Yeah.
But,
well, that human element, I mean, having that, there's always a need. We've got a lot in technology and it's great. And I see it in the investment world all the time too. We use some of that, but that human element is still necessary to make sure you keep things in check. You keep things in balance. You understand some things that technologies can't always pick up on.
I mean, you look at football. Football, how they got the technology with whether a goal was scored, a touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many touchdowns now that they've gotten so technical.
Yeah.
We're touchdowns so many times where the guy, and they just touchdown. And now they get so technical where the knee had just.
Oh, yeah.
And now there's so many brought back that for many, many years, they were just flat touchdowns. They went on about their business, extra point.
Yeah.
Nobody thought a thing about it. And I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of us were happy with the way that was. I mean, just thought that it was.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just, there's a lot of things that I think, I don't know. I think that some of the things are good. Some of them are just so-so. And as far as the strike zone, if they think that's what's going to be a good idea for players to have challenges, so on and so on, I think they're trying to turn the game into a little bit more of a game that kids play with the computer and so on.
Sure. Yeah.
And have that type
instead
of
of getting out there and playing it for real.
I like the fact that they don't have they put a guy at second base and the 10th inning as an umpire? Well, by gosh, I worked a couple games where 18, 20 inning games. I surely would have liked to have a guy at second base in the 10th inning. I mean, that would have made it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But you know what? The other side of that coin is what the game was and has been for many, many, many years. Is we used to look at Babe Ruth and question whether he was as good as Roger Maris and whether Ted Williams was as good as Stan Musial. We compared numbers with numbers and years with years. And Bob Gibson, was he as good as Koufax? And you'd look at their numbers. Their numbers aren't the same anymore.
Right.
Because they're changed and they play in different leagues.
Different rules.
And then, the 5-inning pitcher is a superstar now.
Right.
Most of my career, there was a lot of pitchers who pitched complete games.
Yeah.
I mean, my first year in the big leagues, I had 4 20-game winners on one team.
Yeah.
In the Baltimore Orioles.
Yeah.
Baltimore Orioles had 4 20-game winners on one team.
A little different now.
There isn't 4 20-game winners in the league.
No.
Because they just don't get the opportunity to do that.
Right.
So I mean, those kind of things have changed drastically, and the things like the 9th inning pitcher, the 8th inning pitcher, the 7th inning pitcher.
Yeah, all the specialists.
Yeah, the
right?
specialists. And,
yeah. You don't get that in the umpiring world, do you?
No, you don't get that. Yeah. So I mean, those are some of those things are probably good. I used to love to see Dennis Eckersley. I mean, when Tony created him, he came out of the woods. He's a starter, right? A starter, and his career was about over. And pretty soon they gave him the ball as a 1-inning pitcher in Oakland. And start lighting up people, and all of a sudden they said, "What do we got here?" And he could pitch for 1 inning.
Yeah,
and by God, he could pitch for.
And that changed a lot, actually, right there.
Look at Tony and say, "What are we waiting for? Let's go get him." And he'd wink at me and he could bring him in there, and I mean, boom, 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 and we home. I mean, he 8, 10, 12 pitches, boom. I mean, that's how good he was. Now, he couldn't pitch for 3 or 4 innings, but by God, for 1 inning, he was lights out. And, that was a smart move to have a closer.
Yeah.
To have somebody that always amazes me how we can get 27 outs in the game.
Yeah.
And we can get 24 of them pretty reasonably. If they have a hell of a time, last 3 outs.
Last 3 outs. That's always that finish line. That's
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But,
Well, David, so great career. Thank you so much for coming in. I've got 34 minutes here. I mean, this is incredible. So I could talk baseball forever. So
we're all done, huh, kid?
I guess so, buddy. I mean, I don't know. I could talk forever.
We'll do it again some other time.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yo, this is so fun. Oh my gosh. Yeah. This is mesmerizing. All the different stories you have.
Great studio, great time. And I'd love to do it again with you.
We will. Yeah. All right, bud. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Appreciate for having me.
All right. Thank you so much, Dave Phillips, Major League Baseball umpire retired, joining us in the Serenity Wealth Now studio, talking about how amazing his job was. What a cool gig. I mean, I could talk about baseball all day, folks. I mean, who couldn't, right? America's pastime, grew up playing it as a kid myself, and now being able to watch and talk to one of the greats out there who's umpired 4 World Series. I mean, holy cow. Some of the incidents he's been involved in too. If you want to see some cool stories, look up some of the things that he's been involved in. He's had some things he's had to manage to, always with professionalism. And I think that's what's really cool. And that's what stands out. People that are good at their jobs, people that enjoy and bring passion to their work, there's always the way they handle things. And umpiring is no different. And pretty neat to hear those stories and see that passion come into play. And, technology has changed the game of baseball. It changes the investment world on a day-to-day basis as well, right? We have to adapt. We have to understand how to utilize it. We have to invest in some of those things properly, efficiently, intelligently. But ultimately, you got to make sure you have that human element. That human element is key. Those relationships are key. That intelligence, that human instinct that comes into play to say, hey, maybe we should be a little bit slower in adapting this kinds of things. Or, those little nuances that take place in a strategy, in a philosophy, in an investment approach. It's no different in baseball than it is into the investment world. You have to make sure you walk that fine line between using technology to your advantage and making sure it doesn't run your day-to-day life. That's peace of mind. That is comfort. That is embracing technology, but doing it slowly, doing it intelligently. And I think that that's a great advice for us to all understand and appreciate, because technology does come a long way, and it has come a long way, and it will continue to do so. But when you think about things that are near and dear, like our finances, right? Just like baseball. Baseball's we're traditionalists. Like, we don't want to change, right? We want it to stay to its roots. But you have to adapt too. You have to evolve. You have to stay connected. There's still that personal attention that has to take place, and that will never change. Tune in next week, Serenity Wealth Now Radio, and every week right here on Serenity Wealth Now social medias or on NewsTalkSTL.
Serenity Now! This is Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. Request a free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, by visiting SerenityWealthNow.com.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors, LLC.